Yes, I am a professional wrestler. I'm a professional wrestler, a professional speaker, and professional storyteller. And today I want to share some stories with you about the power of influence. As a wrestler and as a speaker and a storyteller, I know a thing or two about influencing people. And I know that I'm speaking to some young leaders across the world right now who have great influence on people around them. And as I travel the world, wrestling and speaking and meeting young people, I've realized one thing. Everyone wants to be an influencer. When I ask young people in my travels what they want to be when they grow up, 9 times out of 10, the answer is, I want to be famous. That's the answer. They want to be famous. They want to influence people. And they're focusing on the amount of Instagram followers they have and the people that like the stuff that they're sharing on social media. I want to challenge you leaders here today to ask yourself this question. Who are you influencing and how? I know a thing or two about the power of influence because when I was 5 years old, I had three huge influences on my life. There was three men in my life that influenced me to go on and do some crazy things in my life. And these three men are right here. These are the three wrestlers that I idolized as a young boy. These were my heroes. When I was a 5-year-old boy, I played with these in my living room. These are the action figures of my three heroes. And they influenced me and meant so much to me that I've kept these action figures for over 30 years. These are the very figures I played with when I was 5. My number one hero, my number one influence was this man right here. This is Hulk Hogan. He would come down the ring, rip his shirt off his body, flex his muscles, and he was the champion. He was the man, and I wanted to be just like him. My second greatest influence was this man. This is Jake the Snake Roberts. He'd come down to the ring with a 10-foot snake over his shoulders, and I thought he was the most terrifying yet coolest man in the history of the world. My second hero as a young boy was Jake the Snake Roberts. My third hero was this man, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He was an amazing athlete. He could jump off the top rope, soar through the air, fly through the air, and land as an opponent anywhere in the ring. And these men influenced me as a 5-year-old boy who grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere. They influenced me so much that I thought that I would be able to make it here. It was my dream to wrestle in the very ring that my heroes wrestled in front of thousands of people, with millions of people watching me at home. I thought I'd be able to accomplish my dream job and that I could be a professional wrestler. They influenced me so much that I was willing to put myself through hell to make this goal come true. Because in order to be a professional wrestler, I first had to go here. I went to wrestling school and I stepped foot into this. This is actually what a wrestling ring looks like when you take off the fancy ropes and all the lights get taken down, and once all the fancy stuff is taken off, a wrestling ring is just wood and steel beams. And you have to be able to learn how to fall down on your back in the middle of this ring over and over and over again to build calluses on your spine so that your body can adjust to the punishment of being a professional wrestler. My first day of wrestling school, I threw myself down onto my back in the middle of that hard wood steel ring over 100 times. And I kept going back to that wrestling school for an entire year, putting my body through hell in order to make this goal come true. And I learned that hard work pays off. Because after 1 year of wrestling school, I had my first professional wrestling match and I officially became a professional wrestler. But I did not all of a sudden just make it into the WWE because it doesn't work that way. For the first 2 years of my wrestling career, I wrestled on small shows, legion halls, bingo halls, sometimes in front of only 20, 30 people at a time. For 2 years, I wrestled in front of these small crowds, but then I got a phone call. The phone call that I got was from the WWE. And they invited me to come and have a match in the WWE. And I will never forget walking down to the ring and looking out at the audience and realizing this is not 20 or 30 people in a little Legion Hall. Because when I walked out to the ring for my match with the WWE, I saw this. This is the very picture of the arena that I wrestled in for the WWE. 20,000 people were there, with 4 million people watching it at home. I will never forget the feeling I had standing in that ring. And I'll never forget the feeling I had after my match when I went back to the locker room. And I'm changing and taking my boots off, and I'm in this room with all these famous wrestlers. Rey Mysterio sitting over there. The Undertaker sitting over there. Across the room is John Cena. And as I'm taking off my boots, all of a sudden it just hits me like a ton of bricks. And I realize I just wrestled in the same ring as my childhood heroes. Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I just accomplished my 5-year-old childhood dream. I did it. I did it. And the positivity and the confidence that that gave me moved me forward in my career. And I knew that I was going to be able to accomplish this goal of making wrestling my dream job. And 2 years later, my phone rings. And it's the second largest wrestling company in North America, Impact Wrestling. And when they called me, they did not call me to just offer me one match there. No, they offered me a contract. And I signed in a dotted line, and I officially became a full-time wrestler on TV. My dream job came true. And it was here when I finally got this dream job with Impact Wrestling that I learned such a valuable lesson that I would take with me in my life moving forward. And this lesson that I learned was not a lesson that I realized when I actually signed that contract and got my dream job. The lesson that I learned actually was learned when I lost my dream job. Because I only wrestled with Impact Wrestling in my dream job for 2 years, and then I got fired. And the person responsible for me losing my dream job was actually my greatest influence. Because the one man responsible for me losing my childhood dream job was my childhood hero, Hulk Hogan. I went from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows in one day. I show up at my dream job at Impact Wrestling, and all the wrestlers are excited. And I'm like, what are you guys so excited about? And they told me, didn't you hear? Hulk Hogan's coming to Impact Wrestling, and he's going to be our new boss. Not only am I going to meet my hero, I'm going to work for my hero. Before I can get any more excited, a manager grabs me by the arm, pulls me aside, and starts shaking my hand. And he looks at me and says, Cody, thank you for all the work you've done. You've done such a good job, but we're sorry. Today is your last day. You're fired. I said, what? Why? And then he told me, well, because Hulk Hogan is coming. But he's not coming alone. He's bringing 5 of his friends with him, 5 other wrestlers. In order for those wrestlers to be on the television show, we needed to make room for them and fire 5 wrestlers today, and you're one of the 5. We're sorry, today is your last day. You're fired. And it was here that I learned a valuable lesson. I could either take this moment and let it define me and let it be the end of my dream, or I could use it as fuel. I got home feeling more negative than I've ever felt in my life. But then I realized something. I needed to focus on the positive rather than the negative. Because if I focused on the negative, on the fact that I lost my childhood dream job because of my childhood hero, I was going to quickly develop a victim mentality. But if I could find something positive to focus on, then that would help me move forward in my goals. And I realized something. When I was 5 years old and people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I did not say that I wanted to be famous. I did not say that I wanted to be an influencer. I just said I wanted to be a wrestler. I didn't care how many people I was wrestling in front of. I just loved wrestling. And I could still do that. So I focused on that. And I kept moving forward in my career and in my goals. And when I did that, positive things started to happen for me. One of those things is this: I won this. And I became the Canadian heavyweight champion. And I started to travel all across Canada defending this championship belt. How did this happen? It happened because I did not develop a victim mentality by focusing on the negative. I developed a champion's mentality by focusing on the positive. And as I focused on the positive, more positive things started to happen. A year after that, I show up at a show and they say, Cody, you're going to be in a tag team match tonight. I said, really? Do I need to find a partner? I said, no, you don't need to find a partner. We have a partner for you. Really? Who is it? Then they told me, your partner is Jake the Snake Roberts. I got to wrestle in the ring with my hero, Jake the Snake Roberts, and win a tag team match. When I was 5, my dream was to maybe just wrestle in the same ring that he had wrestled in, not actually wrestle in the ring with him. And that dream came true because I focused on the positive rather than the negative. A year after that, I show up at a show and they say, Cody, you're going to be defending your Canadian heavyweight championship belt, but you're going to have a very special manager in your corner cheering you on. Really? Who is it? And they told me, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I got to stand in the middle of the ring holding my championship belt above my head while my hero, Ricky Steamboat, raised my hand in victory. That happened not because I developed a victim mentality, but I developed a champion's mentality by focusing on the positive. And I started to realize as these moments were happening to me that this positive mindset doesn't just work when we're looking at goals and careers and things we want to accomplish. This also applies when we think about influence. Because we need to focus on being a positive influence rather than a negative one. Because we all have the power to influence others. But we can decide to be a positive influence rather than a negative one, simply by making that decision. And I learned this lesson not from any of my childhood wrestling heroes. I learned this lesson from this young boy. His name is Ethan. This is a picture of me with Ethan, and this is actually a picture of the very first time that we met. I'll never forget it. I was at a wrestling show. It was a small one in front of just a couple hundred people. But after I won my match, I look out into the audience and I see this smiling young boy in the front row. I lean through the ropes. I look at his parents who are sitting beside him, and this idea just popped into my head. I want to bring that boy into the ring and take a picture with him. So I lean my head through the ropes and I tell them, hey, what's your son's name? They said, oh, this is Ethan. I said, bring him in the ring. We'll take a picture together. And his parents, they looked up at me and they went. So I get out of the ring. It's okay. You can come in the ring. I'm the champ. We can do this. And they look at me and I go, you don't need to be scared. And they said, no, we're not scared. I said, well, why can't Ethan get in the ring? And they said, he can't get in the ring because he can't walk. I said, that's okay. I held out my arms and I said, will you pass him to me? And they passed me this young boy. They trusted me with their son. And I walked up into the ring with him. I put him on my knee and we took that picture together. After we took the picture, I passed him back to his parents and I said, did Ethan get hurt at school or something? Is he injured? Why can't he walk right now? And I said, no, Ethan wasn't injured. Ethan has never been able to walk. Ethan was born with a debilitating disease and he'd never walked one step by himself a day in his whole life. And my heart went out to this boy and this family. And I said, is there some way that I can help you guys? And they said, maybe there is. Because at that moment, they were trying to raise $120,000 to send Ethan to the United States to get a special surgery at a special hospital. This procedure that they can't do in Canada. If they could just raise that money, then maybe there was a chance that Ethan would one day walk on his own. I decided in that moment that I wanted to be a positive influence and do something to try to help them. So I went home and I sent a message out to all of my fans on social media and told them about Ethan and this fundraiser. Now, I'm not taking credit for this. I was just a very small piece in this influential puzzle. But 6 months later, they raised $120,000 and Ethan went and he got that surgery. 6 months after that, almost a year to the day, I went back to Ethan's little small hometown for another wrestling show. And I brought Ethan there as my special guest to sit in the front row. And I brought him into the ring with me again to take another picture. But 1 year later, that picture looked just a little bit different. Because a year later, Ethan could walk. Ethan had known for weeks that I was coming back to town, and he wanted to be able to get in that ring and walk around the ring with me in front of his family and friends. So he had been practicing for weeks. And this is actually Ethan's very first public step he'd ever taken in his life. And I got to share that moment with him. I will never, ever forget that moment as long as I live. And I started to realize that we all have the power to be a positive influence. You do not need to be in the big time to make a big difference. I was able to help change this young boy's life, not because I was wrestling in front of millions of people, because I was not. You do not need to be in the big time to make a big difference. You can make a big difference right now, today, in your sphere of influence. Who is in your sphere of influence that you can influence in a positive way today? I started to realize that my sphere of influence was young people. As I was traveling across the country, wrestling on these small events, I was meeting people, young children, young teenagers, and for whatever reason, they were drawn to me. They wanted to give me a high five or a hug or to just talk to me. And I wasn't exactly sure why. But I started to realize, I think one of the reasons is I still look at my passion for professional wrestling through the eyes of a young child. I still look at this dream job the same way I looked at it when I was 5 years old. I just want to do it because I love it. And I don't care how many people are watching me do it. This is my passion. And I want to do it. And I started to actually talk to these young people that I was meeting, focusing on them and giving them my time and realizing that these people are important. And as I gave time to these people I was meeting, I started to develop friendships with them. And I became friends with these young people I was meeting at wrestling events all over the country. And as I developed these friendships, I also developed an idea an idea to start something called Giver for Charity. I developed a fundraising campaign to raise money for different children's charities all across the country. And I actually partnered with these young people that I met at these events. These friends that I had made, we partnered together and we raised money for these children's charities all across Canada. And I started doing this in 2018. And from then till now, partnering with these young kids, I've been able to raise over $18,000 for different charities all across the country. And I don't tell you that because I want to brag about that. I'm telling you that because I want you to realize that you too can be a positive influence on those around you if you just make the decision. I made a decision that even though I'm not in the big time, I can still make a big difference in someone's life. You can too. Who's your sphere of influence? Who can you influence in a positive way today? I also want to challenge you by saying you need to focus on the quality rather than the quantity. Rather than focusing on how many followers you have on Instagram or the amount of people that are listening, just focus on the quality of your personal interactions with the human beings around you. And I promise, if you focus on the quality, the quantity will follow. I know that's true because it happened to me. Remember when I told you that I lost my childhood dream job at Impact Wrestling because of my childhood hero, Hulk Hogan? That happened to me 10 years ago. Well, just a few years ago, my phone rang and it was Impact Wrestling. And they offered me another contract. And I signed on the dotted line and I officially became a full-time wrestler again on TV. And now I get to travel all around the world again. And the television show that I wrestle on every week is seen in over 120 countries worldwide in 150 million homes. After I started to focus on the quality of my interactions with other people, my sphere of influence grew exponentially. So, young leaders, I want you to realize today, if nothing else, that you have the power to be a positive influence on those around you if you simply decide today to be that positive influence. And I know that that's true because I'm living proof.